You must hear what God has done. God has done something unspeakably wondrous. He's done it thousands of years ago. There is a spirit of prophecy active in the scriptures, and it has a testimony, and you must hear that. And in this channel, you're going to hear it by God alone. Therefore, if you watch a video here and you hear that, you hear what the Spirit of Prophecy testifies, praise Him alone. Forever alone, praise Him. In this video, we are going to hear what the Spirit of Prophecy in the fiery pillar of old testifies. Do you remember the fearsome sign of the fiery pillar whereby the people was led to the promised land, them even through the Red Sea? What is that? Why did that pillar go behind them? What is the fiery pillar sign? I have a wish that you can see the presence of God manifest like that and lead you. You know what? You can't. If God opens your eyes so that you can see, you can. Because we are being led by that fiery pillar's fulfillment. So what is it with a fiery pillar? Why is it both a cloud and a fiery pillar? It's incredible. It testifies the same. If you think of a pillar is something that stands. In other words, it stands fast. It is established. It is there. It stands. And it is called a pillar of fire. So thus we have an established fire. It is also called a pillar of cloud. And what is a cloud? A cloud is a covering. In the Hebrew we find that in the root meaning of that name, it is a covering. And if you think when that covering comes on the earth, in literal, God is giving us a sign, because when the clouds cover the earth, it makes the earth dark. All right? It moves between the sunlight and the earth. We find a darkening happens. So it is a darkening cover. We have thus an established fire and darkening cover, wherein the Lord was. What is the established thing that stands so fast of fire and darkening? It is the established death verdict. Remember that God has established already there in Genesis 1. We read thereof. Even before the first people fell into sin, they knew it. The punishment for sin is death. It is a pillar. It is established. The wrath, the fiery wrath and justice of God. Darkening cover. But who's therein? We find the Lord. The holy name of God. That is translated there in the English as the Lord. In the abbreviated form Yahweh. It ties with the one that is. And it is the one that we first, when we read that name in Genesis 2, we find it is referencing God who is, who has breathed out His breath to give life. And He is the one that is, so thus He still is. It's fulfilled in Jesus. It is the one that is, that breathed out His breath to give life, and it is Jesus who died and rose, that entered the pillar of fire and darkening cover. Jesus entered the established death verdict. And that takes you to the promised land. See the pillar of fire and walk. It is incredible what happened there when Moses was standing there on the brink in front of that Red Sea with Pharaoh chasing behind. Because you know what? We all stand there. Because in Pharaoh, in the Hebrew word for Egypt, we find captivity, and we know that that was the place of slavery and captivity, the place, the land that the people couldn't get out of. They're being held captive, and in that root in the Hebrew we find a cramping in. What is the cramping in? The place of that we are held captive, that it can't get out of. It is the cramping in of the death verdict. We can't get out of the fact of the established rule of fire and death, the fact that we are guilty of death. We can't get out of it. And remember, the people could only get out of it under the blood of the Lamb sign. We can only get out of death and the captivity. We are held captive by our guilt of that death verdict that we deserve, that speaks to us. We face the captivity of death and damnation because of our guilt. And only under the blood of the Lamb sign, only by what is leading us out, by the Lord that has entered the established fire and darkening cover, Jesus that entered death, we can escape it. And remember, that went behind the people. And the Lord looked back through that pillar at Egypt, right? He looked through the pillar back at death through. And it made that captivity unable to move. And that wall of water, that joining of wasting, a wall in the Hebrew ties with joining. If you think of bricks, they are joined to make a wall. So the joining of water in the Hebrew ties with wasting, the joining together of wasting, the fact that we must be joined to death, we must be joining to wasting, that joining of waste rushed forth on Egypt, on the place of captivity. The wasting came over the death. The death has no power over us because Jesus looks through his death testimony. The Lord looks through the fiery pillar. The Lord looks through the establishment of the fire and the darkening cover. Jesus looks through the fact that he has taken the fiery wrath of God and the darkening cover, and he looks through it back at the death. And it incapacitates the verdict's ability to come over us. And the waste goes over that, and not us. Our only way to heaven is in Jesus who has died. Because we are being led by that fiery pillar's fulfillment. It is the one that breathes out his breath to give life, and it is Jesus who died and rose, that entered the pillar of fire and darkening cover. Jesus entered the established death verdict, and that takes you to the promised land. See the pillar of fire and walk. Glorify God, and please like it to make this channel that is basically now almost no person watching it. Help that people see.